Greetings and welcome back, carnivores, to Carnivore Confidential. I'm Dougie the Butcher. Today I want to have a few words with you about beef and particularly the environmental impact of raising beef. If you're new to my channel, I talk about all things meat related here. Please like and subscribe, and come on back next Thursday for a new upload because I upload every Thursday at 6 o'clock. Anyway, let's get on with it. There are some key reasons why beef and the environment, and there's a bit of an untold story here. Good news seldom makes headlines, but there are a lot of things to consider here. Number one, of course, are plant-based diets better than protein or meat-based diets? Truth be told, whether you're raising lentils or you're raising beef, there are still environmental impacts that need to be considered. It's kind of complicated. The United Nations, for example, listed 14 sustainable goals, but only 2 of which are usually considered. That's water use and greenhouse gas emissions, but it's much more complicated than that. Consider this. If we decide to remove cattle from the grasslands, this would have a significant detrimental effect on the ecosystem of the grasslands themselves, not unlike the healthy system that we saw hundreds of years ago before the buffalo was wiped out. And the frequently asked questions have a very long shadow as far as cattle production is concerned, and the proponents, or the opponents rather, of raising grass-fed cattle and its destruction of greenhouse gases and so on and so forth, they found themselves apologizing for their comments. But unfortunately, bad news has a nature of hanging around for a very long time, and bad headlines don't go away very often. Let's talk about greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases. In Canada alone, automobiles represent 28% of all greenhouse emissions in Canada. That's Canada. I can't speak for the States because I haven't seen a stat that covers that number for the States. But 28% of all greenhouse gases emissions come from automobiles alone. That's not industry. That's not home heating. Nothing. And do you know that 2.4% of that is represented by the greenhouse gases from cow emissions? And on a global scale, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions from cows alone represents 0.04%. That's globally. Let's look at the good things that raising cattle do for our grasslands. It represents a healthy ecosystem, and sadly, 74% of natural grasslands for cattle grazing has been lost due to erosion and development. And grasslands act like a huge solar blanket which traps in energy to feed the cattle. And as a result, beef is a nutrient-rich food source for us. And another thing to consider, cattle represent 68% of wildlife habitat capacity. When I speak of habitat capacity for wildlife, that means that without cattle grazing, there would be a lot of bird species at risk. And when you look at it, folks, cattle turns something that we can't use, grass, into something that's nutrient-rich and densely packed food for us to use. And cattle are typically used on grassland that can't be used for cultivation, whether it's rocky or wet or whatever. Only 9% of that annual cropland in Canada is used for grazing. Now, before I close out my little rant on raising cattle, there are 4 proven dietary changes that we can all employ that will make a sustainable difference in the impact on our environment. Number 1, reduce waste. Use less. 1/3 of all the food we produce becomes waste. If you can't eat it, don't use it. Number 2, eat less. Overeating is a form of food waste after all. Number 3, buy local, buy in season. And number 4, buy food that makes sense. Eat food that makes sense. Nutrient-rich, dense food that uses less resources to produce and therefore results in less waste at the end of the day. And finally, I know I said 4, but for a 5th bullet point, processed foods take more energy to package and produce and manufacture than naturally sourced foods. So I guess that's it for today, folks. I know I only put a few bullet points on the board here, but I didn't feel like keep turning around and talking to you while I was writing. Gosh, if you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe. I know this was kind of long-winded, but I believe I have something to say, and it was needed to be said. Anyway, stay hungry, you guys. See you next Thursday for another upload.